Okay. Warming up. If you are watching this, mic test, mic test. Okay, it's moving. If you are watching,
Is
no,
it?
I'm confused.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
yeah, it is. It is. Okay. If you are watching this, then know that this is a recorded live stream. So you might be wondering why we're not starting formally. We'll start in a few minutes, just waiting for our viewers. But yeah,
Ooh, do the finger guns again.
no.
So cute.
Okay, that's
Koi.
a YouTube cover. I'll do the finger guns, but you have to do a full exaggerated reaction.
Okay, no. Alright. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Or you should do the O and I'll do the A. Mm,
Okay. Oh, I get the Facebook version.
okay, Facebook is running. Resharing now to our mailing list.
Our manual notification squad, which is really what
Mhm.
it is, right? So yeah, but unless if you're on YouTube, then you'll see notifications.
It's
And
also because
we appreciate if you are subscribed and get notifications. Wow, 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 wow. Let me get the link. And then I'm tweeting right now because I'm a tweeter. Oh my god, I need applicant.
no, not on live.
Oh my god, no, it's a Twitter.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Nick just shared the photo. I remember Sunday evenings,
Yeah,
and it's Obar Malate.
it's the corner. It's the iconic Rosa
But this is
Nakpil corner.
early. It's still top and bottom of it.
Yeah, I was thinking that like it wasn't yet the special Ovar second floor. Very cool. VIP area of sorts. Boom, 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 boom,
Mm,
boom, 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 boom.
so monitors are running well. Connections are there.
Oh, let me pull up the to verify who requested today's topic. Oh no, I then have to turn Grammarly back on. Every time I get logged out of my browser, it's like, oh no, I don't want to break my Grammarly logged in streak.
Sad.
One of those stupid things, because put me on any kind of counter. I'm going to be like, oh, I better do that every day. So by right, like it should just be easy and just leave it alone. But since my browser clears cookies every time I close, then I get logged out. So easy fun. Oh, wait, this was Mitch.
Mm.
Today's topic is a Mitch topic. My mistake. Exotic food was king. Yeah, so we'll just running a wee bit more for people to join, but that's okay. Oh, hello, John Russell. Welcome, welcome. Thanks for joining in. Sorry, we're still warming up and waiting for people to arrive, but ultimately it's a freewheeling live discussion podcast. I don't know what you want to call it, but thanks for joining and hope you enjoy. Yeah, so we'll just wait. I don't know, one more minute,
Yeah.
and then we'll run credits, and then
I
we'll
think 1 minute
get
is
started.
fine.
Yeah. Because what else do we have to do on a Friday night except like this show?
You have a lot of other options.
Well, you know what I mean, like because we're not going out.
That's true.
Oh, and then for the curious, we're wearing Pride Studios Mrs. Tan shirts and the God Save the Queen line. So, should I turn off my caption for a moment? Look, yay! So, buying the shirt supports.
Not a sponsor.
Yeah, not a sponsored post, but then buying the shirt supports the queens, and we do love these drag queens. So, hey, if you're interested, you can look them up on Facebook and Instagram. I think. Yeah, I don't remember them having a webpage.
All right, I think we can officially start.
Yep, we'll just roll credits and we'll be with you shortly.
Oh yeah! Baduy Pride!
This is Toby.
And this is Rocky.
And if it's your first time here, welcome to Baduy Pride, our little space on the internet where we talk about anything we want.
It's completely unscripted and not entirely accurate, but at least it's honest. Join us as we talk about everything and anything random live.
And if it's not your first time here, thank you so much for joining us again. This Friday, we're talking about resolving arguments, and this was a requested topic.
Although I know we twisted it a bit because the original tone of the request.
You want to read that?
Yeah, of course I'm going to read the original. First, hi to Jeanette over on Facebook. Thanks for joining in.
Hi to John Russell, who's joining in on YouTube.
Yay! So when Mitch asked it, her original request was how to make a parenthesis valid argument and parenthesis hopefully win. The structure, rules, tips, and must not. So it felt very like school debate, which totally would have been okay to dig into. But then we thought, to make it a bit more Baduy Pride-ish, we wanted to expand it a bit. And then we also wanted to tackle it on a few different levels.
Yes.
One being probably on a professional level, and then maybe on a more personal one, whether it is just between friends or
family or
significant
relationships.
Others. Yes. Okay. So let's go to work.
On a Friday night.
On a Friday night, after a very long work week, let's go to work. So, what are typical arguments that we get into in the workplace?
And just so you know, for any new viewers, if you are currently live with us, do feel free to comment, and we will incorporate your comments into the show.
Yeah. We like to have a conversation.
So, work has to be viewed in two different angles.
Okay.
There's viewing conflicts or arguments as someone in a position of authority.
Okay.
And in the subordinate position.
Okay.
Because admittedly, things become different when it's a relationship or a personal level.
Okay.
Compared to work.
Side question. Where do clients fall in your categorization? Person of authority?
Depends.
Subordinate.
Depends.
Okay. Continue.
No, it really depends because there are some clients who you feel are clients you have a good relationship with. So
Kenny's here. Hey, Kenny.
So you hold them in the position of authority.
Yes.
You want them to feel that you're receptive to all their ideas. But then sometimes you have clients who are either they're just difficult clients who you don't really feel that relationship with.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not necessarily clients you'll mind if they don't stay long.
Okay.
Or there are clients wherein it's really just let's just do this job and get it over with.
Okay.
So that's when I feel they're more subordinate. But only if it's because they hired us to be the subject matter experts to help them too.
Oh, okay. I guess that's a fair point. That's a fair point. Me ultimately, one of the things I try to remember, especially like when there are conflicts or miscommunications or arguments at work, is that I'd like to think that on the workspace, at least although it should be. In general, your group of people, the person that you're arguing with, as long as they're fellow employees, the goal should still be that we all want to move forward for the betterment of the company. Like you're supposed to be aligned in your goals, and whether that is pleasing your customer, satisfying whatever, generating new ideas. This is all like.
So wasn't this the win-win mindset that was like the buzzword back in the 90s?
I don't necessarily go to that extreme, only because it has some negative connotations as an extreme. But ultimately, to keep that in mind, because sometimes work arguments we make the mistake of making work arguments feel very personal.
Yes.
Where criticism of your work is translated as criticism of you
Mm-hmm.
as a person,
Mm-hmm.
and then it kind of muddies the waters. But I think for me, I've always found it very helpful to think that at the end of the day, we're all supposed to be on the same team. We're all supposed to be working on the same thing. And if more people adopt that mindset, then I feel like things will work better. As opposed to when you start falling into silos in your smaller teams or departments or roles, then it's a lot of you should have done this because you're already supposed to know what you're supposed to do or something like that, or that's the process, and
And
that's a lot of finger pointing.
And when it comes to a workplace scenario, there is that goal of one trying to minimize any personal level of conflict.
Yes.
Because work is work. And um, a fact of life is that there will be arguments at work
Mm-hmm.
because of differing opinions, differing decisions. Perhaps there are certain approaches that you don't necessarily feel are the best ones, but someone of authority tells you that's the decision, so you just have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, there is the need to pay attention to how this can have fallout in relation to your clients,
Yes.
to the image of the company, even if it's not specifically to a client. Like, maybe you're not necessarily in a meeting, but then you're having a conflict while you're having coffee at Starbucks, and now everyone can see that these two people wearing this uniform are like yelling at each other, like they're in.
Mm-hmm.
So that does have an effect. And lastly, it's the long term. If you can't find that ability to work together despite conflicts, then maybe you shouldn't work together
There is that.
because that would be an unhealthy level of stress.
And then side note, Mitch is here. Hi, Mitch.
Amen.
This is Mitch's topic, but we transformed it. Hi, Mitch.
So when it comes to conflict management styles, and this is a website I'm drawing from, so that
Okay.
we can use it as discussion
As
points.
a framework, sure.
So this site states that there are 5 conflict management styles, and let's talk about each one and see
Sure.
how we feel about that. First is accommodating.
Okay.
The style is simply putting the other party's needs before your own, allowing them to win and get their way. So accommodation is for situations where you don't care as strongly about the issue as the other. If prolonging the conflict is not worth your time, or if you think you might be wrong.
Okay.
So the pros here, as mentioned, the small disagreements are handled quickly, easily, with the minimum amount of effort. Managers can build a reputation as easygoing. Employees will know they can speak their minds. But then the cons might be they might be seen as weak or too accommodating. Using this technique with larger or more important issues will not solve things.
I get that. So I can see. I mean, in like corp speak or whatever, in more colloquial speak, people phrase this probably more as pick your battles.
Yeah.
Right? It's like if you're going to try to win all the pick. Okay, if you're going to try to win quote unquote every argument,
Yeah.
then it's really not gonna because in context there are really big decisions
Mhm.
and those require to be hashed out and discussed fully. But then for minor things, is this really the point you want to make? And something and this I feel is especially true sometimes
AJ.
on the creative side.
Yes.
Like when you're trying to protect your creative vision, but then the client has like a stupid revision,
Mhm.
and sometimes it's just like just do it.
Okay, we'll get into creative side
Okay,
after we talk about the top
Okay,
five.
okay.
Because
But yeah, so but going back to this accommodation.
Yeah.
So I think use sparingly, use only for minor things. I agree. If it's just going to be you're going to accommodate for the sake of accommodating, or you're always going to accommodate, then you're a doormat
Mhm.
with no opinion.
I will also state that you shouldn't count. Ooh, because there are some who'd be like,
I gave way now, and
"Pinagbigyan
then
kita, this is the 4th time I'm letting you do this," then it becomes, it doesn't really feel accommodating. It
yeah,
feels
yeah.
like,
It feels like you're banking.
yeah.
You're-
And it's sad how there are relationships that are founded
Oh,
on this type
that's
of a
true.
viewpoint.
Remember we used to joke about should we schedule an argument?
We're not there yet. Let's focus on work.
Okay,
But yes, I
Yeah,
remember
we've
that.
talked about like, we don't fight. We should schedule a fight. Is your calendar free? No.
Item number 2 in managing conflicts at work, avoiding. The style aims to reduce conflict by ignoring it, removing the conflicted parties, or evading it in some manner. Team members in conflict can be removed from the project if they are in conflict over um, deadlines are pushed or people are being reassigned into other departments. So pros gives people time to calm down and solve a surprising amount of issues. Time and space can give perspective, but cons can make the conflicts worse if used in the wrong situation. Managers can seem incompetent if they overuse avoidance. Now, I feel this one is a very popular way people are dealing with issues now.
I
in
don't like the
world.
way this is worded. I don't like avoiding as a strategy. Maybe distancing or
Or
like cooling
diffusing.
down,
Yeah.
diffusing. But saying it's avoiding the conflict,
Because
then it's
here,
gonna blow up later.
but the description here is you just separate them. You don't even discuss it,
Yeah, but I
and that does happen.
and it does happen. It's very Asian in
It's
that sense. I
it,
just don't agree with it.
it's also very common now in many who practice that on social media, wherein it's all about just separate and close and no discussions.
On social media, I get it. Like the detox, the shutdown, the I'm
Mm.
just gonna not gonna respond. That's fine. But in work, because you don't have a choice, you're gonna see these people again. Like, because unless the level of avoiding is like I'll reassign you to another department.
Well, there is the shutdown and detox and stuff, which I am fine with as well. But
Yeah,
then it
yeah.
becomes weird when it's imposed.
Mm, mm, mm. Gag orders and
Mm.
stuff. And my problem with this in a workplace context, if you just push people away from one another and you don't explain why, is that they may not know that they're being pushed away. They may not know that this is being done to resolve a conflict. And so you're just putting it on pause. And when they come back together, maybe not everyone has matured and come to realize that, oh,
Mm.
maybe I did something wrong. They're just going to feel the bad feelings again.
I also feel this only works in minor conflicts. For example,
Probably.
you've been having a
Hey,
project
Nikki.
through the week and you're now super stressed out that you start to nitpick at each other for every single thing. And it
Mhm.
might be okay, time out. Focus muna on the other project. You focus muna on this project.
Mhm.
And then the next day, cooler heads, you can continue. So there was no need to really discuss it and stuff. So I could see this working in that type of approach. But the moment the conflict escalated beyond already just the small reactive moments, I don't think this will work.
Yeah, yeah. I just me I like addressing things, so
Mm.
I don't like
And I
avoidance.
think we believe that
Personally,
communication is always
yeah.
necessary for any conflict to be resolved.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. 3, compromising. The style seeks to find the middle ground by asking both parties to concede some aspects of their desires so a solution can be agreed
That's
upon.
sexy wording. No.
The style is sometimes known as lose-lose, and in that both parties have to give up a few things to agree into a larger issue. Compromise can lead to resentment if overused, but it does allow issues to be resolved quickly. It allows a level of understanding to happen with the other's perspective, and managers using this tactic can be seen as facilitating agreement.
Okay. If you watch Lower Decks this week, this conflict resolution style comes up a lot,
That's
and
true.
then it's really both parties are unsatisfied with the result. Oh, I don't like this as much. Oh, this is great diplomacy, compromise. So I get that, and then but I appreciate the wording that in a way both lose,
Mhm.
which is important to think about because
Yes.
both have to give up something, um and it could be like mutual accommodation, going back to the first style,
Mhm.
but it's negotiated and it's clear that both sides are aware that the other gave up something.
I feel though that this is actually how all conflicts resolve, just in
Mm.
degrees that people don't necessarily realize.
Okay.
So it might be like, okay, you get what you want, I'm letting you have it, but you don't really realize that you're still losing because now everyone sees you're like that, and so it's still lose you. Because it's one thing to say
My partner, the elk.
no, but you see it, right? Because if it whenever there's a conflict, there's usually both people want something.
Okay.
But if you really look at the conflict, it really goes beyond that want.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the conflict is they both want it, but this one also has some issues with the way this person works, so that's why he doesn't want to budge.
Okay.
Or this one feels he's super overworked, has nothing to do with this person, but he feels he deserves it.
Okay.
So, with all these layers that have been parts of why the conflict started, even if they win, they lose.
So meta.
But at the same time, if
Okay.
they do compromise, that also means even if they lose, they win.
So what's the next something on the list? I will just let you have your moment. Compromise.
Item number 4, competing. The style rejects compromise and involves not giving in to others' viewpoints or wants. A party stands firm in what they think is the correct way of handling the situation and does not step back or back down until they get their way. Note that this is not a style, and this is highlighted, that should be relied on heavily. Managers using the style show they are strong and will not back down from principles. Disputes can be solved quickly because there is no space for disagreement or discussion.
Mm.
Cons, however, they can be seen as unreasonable or authoritarian. I feel this only works when the gap is big. For example, to use military, if the general says this, then the private just has to follow.
Okay.
Don't
Okay.
bother competing. I mean, if ever there are cases where the private's voice might have to be heard, those are like super rare conditions when that will happen. So I feel this is sort of only really happening when it's that sort of a difference. So like if the CEO decides that, the Christmas party is on this date and you can't because you wanted to have a family party, I'm sorry, that's the CEO. But at the same time, if it's like just a small lunch with your boss and your friends, then you can speak up and you can map it out. That's where I think this applies.
I guess that makes sense. I mean, like, and I don't want to lean too heavily on authority, but it is a reality that at some points there is like the management veto, and like, no, we're not doing this. Sorry, and all that. But again, you sparingly. I
Yeah.
agree on that point. Like, it can't always be that way. Then I feel like the alternative relate, and I wonder if it'll come up, is that you can be uncompromising, but then it's just a bigger burden to convince the other side of the merits of your side, which is what I sometimes like to do. But then again, that's me as a debater, and then like it comes up, and like I'll try to argue my points.
I will also add that there are people who are, by habit or nature, just contrarian.
That is true. That is
Yeah.
true. I have literally played that role.
And, when it comes to that, there is no settling it. There will always be something wrong with what you'll propose.
Mm-hmm.
So,
At some point, you just gotta decide.
whether you'll just do it or you'll just finally give up and follow.
Yes.
But then you'll notice the moment you'll follow, they'll say, but why are you now just choosing that? Does that mean your side earlier didn't really have merit?
People like that, you just send out. No, you're not helpful.
Okay, let's move to. Oh, I think that was it.
That was the
That's the
five.
last one. Collaboration is the
five,
last
sorry.
one. 5. Collaboration. The style produces the best long-term results. At the same time, it's the most difficult and time-consuming to reach.
Collaboration.
This is one of the
makes it
hardest
happen.
ones when you're dealing with creatives.
Collaboration. Working together. Dig it. That's actually cooperation, but thank you.
I feel collaboration works best when people are from different fields,
Different
but-
departments.
yes.
Like,
different expertises or different perspectives.
okay.
So, like, if to use a movie as an analogy, if you're collaborating between the backdrop guy, the lighting guy, the sounds guy, and the actors, then it works. But then, if it's five lighting guys collaborating with 5 lighting guys is so difficult.
When Toby said to use a movie analogy, I thought he was going to cite a movie. Instead, it's literally film production. So,
Nick shares collaboration is uncomfortable for him, and I understand that because there is, when you're a creative, there is that part of you that's very artistic. This is my art. This is my vision. This is my voice. But at the same time, when you're in a workplace,
it's
you'll
graphic design and not graphic art.
and you'll have to decide how much of that job does take you as an artist
Mm-mm.
or not. because
Okay.
it is valid as well to be a fully artist mode and take jobs, and whatever they say, you'll still do what, and if you're really brilliant, then it will work. But there's also the fact that if you're not really that brilliant, or at least the works you're creating aren't hitting that mark, then you're still failing in your job. So mileage may vary.
Yes, yes. So, but and then I feel like regardless of approach for me, and then yeah, that going back to my earlier thing is
Mhm.
like I think all of it can work, but then I would like people to remember to keep in mind that ultimately you're supposed to work together to reach a resolution that makes sense. I
Mhm.
mean, there are some things that you must fight, and that is the hill you will die on because it's just plain wrong, morally wrong, whatever wrong, and it's wrong, and you're going to stand for that, and you'll fight for it. But then ultimately, the question just has to become, what does fighting for it
Yes.
do? What does this help in the long term? If you drag this out longer, will it benefit things?
Mhm.
Will the job that needs to be done for your client or customer still get done
Mhm.
if you refuse to budge?
I'd even add, are you actually coming from a position wherein you are more certain you know the right path?
Mm,
Because it's very possible that there's information you're not aware of, but you're still trying to, take charge despite realizing there are areas of ignorance.
or do you really are you thinking with the client's best interests in
Mhm.
mind, or just because you want to be right?
Mhm.
And it's
Yes.
sometimes it's hard to know the
Yes.
difference because you started by telling yourself that this is what the client probably wants, but then somewhere along the way you can get lost in your own head.
And then what the client stated is not necessarily what the client needs.
Ah, that is
So
true.
it's very possible that the client states, okay, this is what I want, and then adds, okay, so let's do it this way. But then your expertise and experience tells you that's not the way. And
Yeah.
you will have to speak up when it comes to matters like that. So I think many conflicts like that happen when, let's say, for example, sometimes sales in their excitement to try to give
Isn't
the
it sad
client,
that sales is always the enemy?
yeah,
I'm
but no,
kidding.
but in the sense of in the excitement of wanting to do what the client wants,
Yes.
um, the easiest way is to para. When
Yeah.
client says this, I'll say this, and that's what has to be done.
Yes.
But there is that realization that when sales translates it to the production team or to the working team, sales is not a subject matter expert of what the production team is doing.
Yes.
So the
Sadly.
production team should always have that perspective that sales is just relaying and not interpreting.
Mm.
And that's where your team now has to try to interpret what was relayed and then get the approval if that was hitting the goal.
Yes.
And that's why collaboration can be so hard
Mm-hmm.
because now different perspectives can kick in.
Yes. Um, and then like I feel lucky that I'm in a company that is small enough not to have a dedicated sales team.
Mm-hmm.
Although it means more of us have to hustle for clients and get the work, but we don't have a dedicated sales team, so we don't often fall into this challenge. And I know that there are some companies, like even my previous BPO life, we were very proud of the fact that the sort of accounts representatives, even the salespeople who are involved at the point of sale, are still involved with the account when it becomes regular.
Mhm.
Although there is an account management, like client relationship team, that would also work alongside. But there was that the whole point was trying to stress consistency, because
Mhm.
there is a stereotype or a notion to think that sales is going to promise the moon that you're never going to see them again once you become a regular client. And that's like it's a challenging image to change. I understand how it
I
happens.
think it is a
I teach
practice.
sales.
I think it is a practice that was common before. That
Yeah.
when it's sales, no matter what, say yes.
Yeah, which is like bad selling, but that, and it's definitely not how I've ever trained people to do sales back in my training life. But um, but I can see that happening, and the other thing I think that's also very important is that ultimately, uh, someone is going to have to, at the very minimum, mediate, or even better, lead the
Mhm.
discussion. Because a lot of times it can, when there are arguments, then it just becomes a
Everyone's saying a piece.
Yeah, back and forth, opinion, escalation, but then no one is like driving things towards resolution. They
Yes.
always say that when you put a group of people together, a leader will eventually emerge. But in the workspace, there needs to be a clear understanding of who that person is. Because a lot of times it's a lot of waiting for each other and then pakiramdaman. It's the
Or
same.
in other
Yeah,
times, it's a lot of feeling sila na yung leader.
that is true too.
And, they're all thinking they're already in charge.
Even though they may be staff.
Or
No respect,
or-
no disrespect.
or even though their offerings already have been questioned. So like you might have someone stating, okay, let's do this, and then others might say, wait, that doesn't work because we have to do this and that. But you'll still push, no, we'll still have to do this, and it doesn't go anywhere. Which I think leads to my first main advice when it comes
Okay.
to conflicts, which is you must always, and this is one of the hardest things to do, learn to listen to learn and not listen to answer. A lot of times
Ooh,
when
I somehow remember someone saying this in the past 24 hours. Were you listening to a video?
no, I said it to my coworkers.
Oh, okay. You said it. I overheard it. Okay. It's like, I feel like I heard this on a call.
But
Okay,
yes, you must always learn to listen to learn because we are always wired when it's a conflict to rebut, to
Yes.
answer, to debate, to respond to a statement and say why no, this is my perspective. But we're failing to realize that if we listen to learn first,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
that allows us to understand where they're coming from.
Yes.
That allows us to process why they see us as wrong. And I know that a large part of why listening to learn is hard is not just because we're too caught up in our perspective, but sometimes it's because we're also afraid to look like we're not ready to answer.
Mm-hmm.
When
Well,
people are silent, there's that feeling of, you're quiet because you're wrong.
what more now on video calls,
Mhm.
right? Video calls where everybody likes to be without video. It's like, it's not gonna help.
So in my case, in many instances wherein there might be conflicting perspectives or creative conflicts, I'm more upfront about it sometimes. Wherein I'm like, okay, wait, explain to me again why you're doing this. I'm trying to understand,
Mm.
and I'm not, I will be quiet muna because you might be thinking why am I not answering? But please just explain. I want to see your perspective.
Okay.
And sometimes they'll explain, and then I start to see, okay, now I see why they want to do that, and suddenly I'll incorporate it, and okay, let's use that. And that's how it works best for me. There's
Mhm.
that importance of listening to learn.
I get that also like on a creative side. Like when you have client feedback that's weird and then our accounts team will have to interpret that feedback and
Mhm.
translate it into work. And naturally sometimes everybody like whether verbally or whether verbally or not don't agree with the client revision.
Yes.
It's not great. But then ultimately the client is the client and the best you can do is to do the revision as the client specifies and then maybe present one
An
more
alternative.
option
Yes.
closer to what you think is better. But you cannot get away from doing the client revision.
And I think that's a good second item,
Yeah.
which is present alternatives, but never forget the job.
Yeah.
When it's a workplace, you cannot afford to be Miranda Priestley. Yeah.
Unless you're Miranda Priestley.
Yes.
You know?
So
Unless
you
you're running the
so
company.
you cannot simply just stare at them and ponder why isn't everyone ready. You have to be able to present what the client needs, even if you think it's wrong.
Mhm.
But then you now have every right to present a second option, which is your best approach. But realize if they still don't choose it, then
Pick your battles.
yeah, it's either you're not getting you're actually missing out on the perspective they want, or they're really determined to get that.
Yeah.
And in both cases,
Then that's what they want.
it's
the
not
client.
your decision.
Yeah, it makes it the right
Mm.
choice because it's what the client wants.
Because in the end, there is still the larger perspective you might not be seeing. Maybe what you have is the brilliant approach as far as what you thought creatively, but you don't realize last season they did that
That's true too.
with a different team.
And you're only working on them with this year.
And that's why for them, that's old enough for us.
yes.
So you have to really open your eyes to those possibilities.
This comes in with the disclaimer that we probably should have said at the beginning, like, hey, but these are all personal opinions and in no way reflect the respective companies that we work for, despite whatever. So just Yeah, just covering things. This is just Toby and Rocky's personal opinions on work, which may or may not be shaped by the work that we do today. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Um, Other thing. I think I also want to throw out the importance of knowing when to change venue, only because, especially now when we're all working from home, is that there's a lot more electronic communication going on.
Yes.
Then you get a lot of chat wars, email wars, Slack wars, whatever you want to call them. But this ongoing like conflict, and then I'm always like, something when I'm addressing conflict resolution that's escalated to me, and then they're like, oh, I can read it out, and like, oh, did this all happen on chat? This is all a private chat between the two of you. So have you talked to this person? Like, talk to this person. Uh, there is always value in that, and I only set this as a warning because, what's this? Uh, all electronic communication, whether chat, email, and such, lose a lot of our communication signals.
Like 80-90%.
Yes,
And
but
that's not a fast fact.
why? Because you're not the Flash. Because that would be a flash fact. Okay, so because there's so much that we convey based on our expressions, our gestures, um, the inflection of our voice, the pacing, and all these things, the tone. All this is lost when it is an electronic communication.
And these are basically um, direct communications. There's also the indirect ones, body position,
Mm.
distance from person, um, choice of appearance when
Level
speaking to them.
level of kuyakoy.
Yeah, I mean, those are all actually factors which still do contribute. Because it might sound like, what is that really a factor? But then, if you compare the person in the office who greeted you from afar to the one who walked up to you and said hello, the one who walked up to you feels more intimate, more friendly. So these are things which you overlook, but actually still do play a larger role in the larger message.
Yeah, and then so I've seen a lot of like electronic communications get out of hand, and it's not even intentional. It's like some people just don't chat well. I mean, like I feel that way when I post on social media. I am a compulsive, like smiley person,
Mm-hmm.
and probably
You're afraid it might take a different tone.
I tend to use or a lot of ha-has and whatnot. And how often do I say ha-ha in real life? But because you're always worried about like being misunderstood when you're communicating on social media and other digital platforms.
Yes.
So things like that. So know when it's time to change venue. So if I always tell people like if your chat argument has filled the screen, if your email argument requires you now to scroll to the next page, say all these things, it's a signal that too much is being written. You need to quote unquote pick up the phone,
Yes.
which in this case means setting up a video call if you're working remotely and getting onto that call and hopefully get video on. There's because just talking without video, it still doesn't address that problem. I think both sides need to remember that there are people involved and to have that conversation. It's not a guarantee in itself that things will get resolved, but I feel like there's a bigger chance it'll get resolved that way because you're treating one another as people and dealing with each other as equals as opposed to keyboard warrioring things.
And admittedly, seeing each other as
You type like
people
this.
is huge. Because
Yes.
the fact that you'll say, ayoko ng video na hihiya ako or hindi comfortable, but that's the point. You are now a person who can be seen and you see the other person. And if the aggressiveness is not surviving that hiya, then that's a good sign that it's a miscommunication that
Yeah.
can be resolved. But if it's you face each other, oh no, then maybe it really is a bigger issue that needs to be resolved.
I mean, like, and I always tell people, like, there's a lot of stress going on, not just because of work, but because of the pandemic, because of personal things that are happening, because you're not working in a dedicated office environment, but you're working at home with random roosters, errands from family, all these things that you're trying to juggle at the same time. And this can wear you down and add up to your conflict. Even for people who live alone, sometimes the complete reverse is also equally stressful. Not having anyone to talk to, not having uttered a word aloud for a day. These things kind of wear you down.
And then there is the aspect of the micro frustrations that build up. Something as simple as you type, you expect an answer, it takes a minute longer than expected before they reply.
Yes.
Which I'm sorry, you have to accept the fact that a lot of chat, a lot of messaging is still not real time communication.
Yes.
It's still um, the person might be switching tabs. The person might have stood up to get a glass of water. The person might have slow internet.
Mm-mm.
We've sort of clocked that it's around 15 seconds delay from anything we say right now in the live stream to someone hearing it and then reacting in chat. So sometimes when we watch live streams and people are like, okay, to the viewers, if you're enjoying this, press one or say this, we know it's going to be around 15 seconds before they see anything.
And then it's going to be like a full 30 seconds before you hear us acknowledging
Yes.
what you did.
And we sometimes notice when some people's live streams, that gap starts to make them panic. No one's watching. I don't think people are interested.
Mm-mm.
I know at work, I sometimes have coworkers who are like, guys, come on, answer. I'm already waiting. And, I'm like,
Whoa.
gotta wait for the signal to reach you.
The biggest reminder of this is that on a video call, you cannot sing karaoke together.
Yeah.
You cannot sing, or at the very least, you cannot sing happy birthday to someone at the same time. Which is like, at this,
Well, you can't sing it well.
you can't sing it well together, completely synchronized. And I'm sure this far into the pandemic, into our long running quarantine, you have had to try to sing happy birthday at least once, and every time it sounds like you're singing around but on the wrong beats.
Mm.
Happy birthday. So it because the platform is still not 100% synchronous for sound. So
Now, the last thing I'll probably add as far as the workplace conflicts are concerned, no matter how close you are, it is still the workplace as
Mhm.
far as those conflicts are concerned. So, whether you are childhood friends who are working together, or family members who are in a family business, or partners who happen to have the luck or curse of working in the same company, when there are conflicts at work, they have to be conflicts at work.
Mhm.
It is not right, it is not healthy to rely on personal relationships to tide over work conflicts, because the work issue was basically covered up with a personal reason, but it doesn't necessarily change it from happening again. So, um, you might have, let's say, a couple who are working together. Nagtampo yung isa because the other one was late for lunch, and then dinaan na lang sa, honey, it's okay, blah, 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 blah. That doesn't change the fact that they'll still be late because of other meetings later on. So you always have to consider targeting it as a work issue when there are conflicts at the workplace. It can be difficult because, admittedly, when you are talking to people with relationships compared to coworkers, there are times communication's easier because you kind of understand where each other's coming from, or to the very least, you're more familiar with each other's communication style.
Mhm.
So be careful of that trap. I've seen a lot of times wherein people have gotten comfortable. Um, so it gets comfortable to the point that the rest of us get uncomfortable
Mm.
because the way they're dealing with the situation is a very personal level they're used to.
Yeah.
But then we're all like, should we leave the room?
There is that. There is that. Okay. Mitch has a question, which is how to handle arguments where the other person just wants to be the only voice in the room, which is like, there's a lot to unpack there, but okay. I think we can take a stab at that. So, but I get, it sounds like, it sounds like the person, you're saying the person is being unreasonable. Right?
Flippy.
No, 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 no.
Hey, it sounds like you. Sorry.
I was aiming for art of negotiation.
Okay.
Like
Yeah, you're right.
I'm labeling. But it sounds like that. Yeah, if the person is just being very uncompromising,
Mhm.
there's no. I mean, it really depends on the situation, the position of the people involved. What are you arguing about? Is it a
Mhm.
decision? I mean, there is the try to bring it to a close, which means if it is something that you're going to vote on as a group, bring it to a vote, because a person continuing to argue, belabor their point is like, it's like a salesman who continues to give you the benefits of a product and not closing the sale.
Mhm.
It's sooner or later you just got to end it, and then like, no, let's talk about the sale. So I think that's one.
Mhm.
Another is tabling the discussion. and change, which is essentially changing the venue, which is okay. So maybe there are, so thank for everybody raising their points, blah blah blah, and then uh, so let's have everybody think about it first, and then we'll make a final decision sooner or later. And if you're like the deciding party, you have the room of, you don't even have to involve them or make the announcement today. Then it's just like, I've considered all the points, and then we're going to make a decision. I mean, like, if you think, if they've made their point and they're just repeating themselves, then it's got to stop. And that's why the best way to stop is to bring it to a decision, whether it is what's this? Whether it is
resolving it or tabling it.
yes. That's my take on it.
Yes.
How about you, Toby?
If it's someone who I know is really in love with their own voice, I call it up. I bring it up that, okay, wait. So we heard your appearance, we heard all this and that. Do you feel that solves the problem? And then if they say, no, I'm actually not sure. Okay, then maybe stop muna. Let's focus on the problem. Because sometimes you do have people who just like having that moment in the spotlight, even if it doesn't contribute anything.
So, hey, if you ever decide to sign up for masterclass, then I will strongly recommend Chris Voss teaches the art of negotiation. He's a former FBI hostage negotiator, and he has a lot of techniques for kind of dealing with people like this, and it plays upon a lot of, like, we like to hear people agreeing with us, or we like to hear people using our terminology,
Echoing.
yeah.
All that.
So one of the big thing was like mirroring, which is a lot of like, it sounds like blank, but repeating what they said in order to steer them in a certain direction, of course.
But
Not
it
just-
also
not
shows
just the
them that you were listening.
Yes. And then there's labeling now, which is like, it's already paraphrasing and like,
And it shows them you're processing what
yes.
they were saying.
So it sounds like what, blah 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 is important to you. Is that a fair statement? And these are ways to like kind of get them trained to say yes to you, and all these things. So it has a bunch of techniques like that, which could be useful in this situation.
Yes.
But thank you for your question, Mitch. I hope that helped. And I guess the only other thing is that there is the quote unquote like frustration that you are presenting a logical argument and then people aren't agreeing. But I think it's also important to remember that it is logical for you based on your context, based on your expertise within your sphere of influence. But unfortunately, which is often the case in work, is that everybody's coming from different spheres
Yes.
and different perspectives. And maybe from their perspective, whatever they're pushing is logical, is the obvious answer.
Come on, you're not gonna say it. You're gonna say it. You
What?
have to say it.
What am I gonna say?
Your experiences.
Oh, I was gonna do that. That
I
your
was waiting for
experiences
you to-
are not universal.
I was like so waiting for it.
I love the chemistry quote.
Yes.
Because it's so applicable.
true.
It's
It's
so
so true. Your experiences are not universal.
and that's why it becomes important to kind of practice some degree of empathy, be the bigger person, drive things towards resolution.
Yes.
I don't know, and empathy discussions bring up innumerable analogies, comparing it to wearing someone else's shoes. I remember someone jokingly saying that I will give blah 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 money to someone who gives me an empathy analogy that does not involve shoes, which is a good point. I am guilty of this in my years of training. But yeah, so just but it is important to kind of try. And even though, this is not not a game of fairness. It's like, if you really want to sort of win arguments, or like or at least walk away from an argument feeling good about it, whether you quote unquote won or lost, then I think the biggest step is understanding. Like what Toby was saying, listening to learn, and by learning you understand, and then the end result will be happy.
Yes.
Mitch like, hey, the experience is not universal. It's not mine. It is Kimmy Schmidt. Well, actually, it was Dong, right?
Yes.
So it was it's the Asian guy. So
Yes.
go rewatch Kimmy Schmidt. I love it.
All right. So that is a nice. We covered work.
Whoa, let's go home.
Let's go.
We went to work, and now let's go home.
Let's go to relationships.
Yeah.
So relationships breaks down to different levels.
So
You have-
arguments in relationships.
You have arguments with family,
Ooh, yes.
which is especially for Filipinos, it's a very baggage, filled situation.
And I feel like it's almost like work.
Yes. because there's a certain
'Cause there-
hierarchy that they expect.
And there are people that you don't necessarily have a choice of dealing with.
Yeah. And then beyond family, we then have arguments among friends, and then arguments with a relationship.
With significant others,
Yes,
I guess.
significant others.
Yeah, yeah. So, family.
So the hard part about family is unless you are coming from a family that is less traditional than what is currently the norm.
And we
And-
say this as a Philippine norm.
And we
I
say
guess.
this as what we see currently as the norm for Filipino families in 2021.
as
because-
reinforced by
because
our
things-
own media.
Because
Yeah.
things do change.
I'm sure
as time
things do
passes.
change. I'm sure
Um,
we look ultra radical versus like 50
Yeah.
years ago.
So generally, when it comes to family, the unwritten but often stated rule is while you live in their house, it's their rules.
Yes.
And in
I
many,
respect this though.
in many ways, that is a truth that you will have to accept. For those who are not Filipinos watching the stream, it is not uncommon in the Philippines for people to still live with their parents, whether officially living in their house or living
in a compound
in a
of some sort.
compound of different houses that are all built together. So in some ways, you're all still in the same
Like in the
property.
same lot.
Yeah. And in those cases,
Even no, live with your parents even when you're married and you have kids. And you're still with your parents.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
so there are certain territorial rules that happen in such situations. Um, for some, it might be as simple as, when they call you for dinner or lunch, you show up because we will eat together. For others, is the moment they speak, you shut up. You have no right to argue. You have no right to speak back. And then for others, it's nothing that drastic. But the moment they ask for something, you must comply.
Mm.
Doesn't matter if you're the 52-year-old son still living with them. If they ask you to pick up their slippers because their feet needs the slippers, you go and pick it up. So, so
I do this. I'm like, if I'm asked, I gotta do it.
Mm.
I gotta do it.
now, um, your mileage may vary. For some, following is a way of showing respect.
Yes.
It's a way of giving back to people who, when you were still the helpless, young, forever hungry, noisy monster you were when you were a baby, they
Monster.
they handled everything. They stayed awake. They fed you. They cleaned your poop. They ignored the fact you peed on them. And
Quite skillfully,
these
too.
are the small ways that they can give back. For others, I know there's that sense of, respect has to be earned both ways. So just because they're my parents, it doesn't mean I owe them anything. And in some ways, there's truth in that perspective.
Yeah, we don't want to turn parenting into a transactional relationship.
But at the same time, there is a large sense of, but it does say a lot to have that perspective, in the sense that you feel you have no obligations or no responsibilities or no connections to your parents or to your family members who were there for you at the time when you were less experienced and less wise with the ways
Or
of the world.
without resources.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, ultimately, if your frequency of conflict with your family, especially your parents, reaches a point that you're resenting being with them, there is a saying: the familiarity breeds contempt.
Mhm.
In that sense, then because while you are living with them, this is always going to be the situation.
Mm-mm.
Because to some degree, whether you like it or not, family or parents in particular, I will always say number one will always see you as a little child.
Hey, Carla.
They don't, whether it is literal or not, but then they will always see you as their baby, whatnot. And then number two, they are always coming from a position of love in the
Yes.
sense that they are thinking about what is best for you
From
But-
their
from their perspective. You may not agree,
Mm.
but then as parents, as whatever, and then especially as head of the household that you are living in, then that's why you often get a lot of my way or the highway. And
Mhm.
if you really cannot, was it? I guess what I'm saying is these are often arguments that you're never going to win
Mhm.
because you are living in their house. You are, even if you're, donating or whatever to help fund stuff. If majority of like paying for the house is still them, and this is like place you grew up with, then there's a very big chance that you're never going to win any arguments because that's always going to get brought up. then maybe it's time to go and make distance, and you'll notice your relationship with your parents will totally change once you've moved out.
Yes.
It's scary in itself, and I know it's not everybody's ready to move out and live on their own, but it will totally redefine your relationship, because then you are truly going to deal with one another as adults, and not just as they can't always see you as their child, because now
Yes.
you're living alone, completely different household, whatever. But
Mm.
be ready for that transition.
You have to also bear in mind that despite the way they might be behind certain perspectives, um, they're not necessarily wrong in embracing them. Example, I had a friend um, who was still very certain that as far as his daughter is concerned, he doesn't want his daughter to wear this and that and this and that,
Okay.
because there's a lot of stupid people out there.
Yes.
And of course, the initial response was, "So why are you policing your daughter when
Victim blaming.
when
Yeah.
she's not the one at fault?" But then there was also the perspective of, "But the world isn't better yet."
That is
So
also
that
true.
is still minimizing risk. So I think what needs to happen in such situations is that there has to be that communication. Why don't you want her to wear these things? If you don't explain it and just say don't wear them, then it will feel like an attack on her freedom, an attack on her ability to express herself.
And if he doesn't understand
Where you're
where
coming,
you're coming
from,
from, yes.
then it will not be something that will be building a relationship between you. However, if you do open up conversation, you do share perspectives, then that allows you both to express why you're coming from this and that. And likewise, for the younger party, you can't just say it's your right to do this and that's the end of the story. You have to realize that your decisions do make you responsible, and this is not victim blaming, but they do make you responsible for your choices. When you choose to go out, when you choose to take this course, when you choose to watch that movie, um, it wasn't something thrust at you. It was something you also chose to get into. So there is that level of you have to be responsible enough to do the additional precautions necessary. When I go out to drive, I don't just assume everyone will follow their laws. So I still wear my seatbelt. I still lock my doors. It doesn't mean I'm, um, hurting myself and not driving freely. But it also means I'm being responsible enough to realize that we're not yet at the point where we are safely able to drive without care, without seatbelts. So it's stuff like that. Because when you have things becoming very strangely illogical, so for example, don't go out in skimpy clothes, and the discussion is because the area you live in, maraming individuals na scary and they're in the street and ganyan. But then if you realize that they're also telling you not to wear those skimpy clothes while at home, then that needs to be a discussion, because now it's okay. So who's the danger now? Why is the real reason you don't want me to do this? And then maybe they're wrong because there's this thinking it's bad to wear skimpy clothes.
Side note: our resolution was kind of low. If it looks better now, then I hope we did something. Because I was looking at the monitor, like, we're kind of jittery, blurry. So I hope this is better. Okay. Yeah. So, but on the whole, then similar to work, where I always try to keep the mindset of everybody at work, at some point, at some level, are trying to do what's best for the
Yes.
company and moving forward. For family, I always try to remind myself that we're all coming from a place of love and wanting to do what is best for the other.
Mm-mm.
It's just that we may not agree. Sometimes we just instinctively get rankled when parents still try to tell us what to do.
Yes, there's that instant reaction of,
Yeah, and like
I'm old na. Why are you telling me this?
yeah, I'm almost 40 and you're still calling me baby boy. But then hey, I love it. I don't want that to stop. So my experience is not universal. So it really depends on you. But yeah, but I would like to think that family generally come from a position of love, and I know it's hard to see this sometimes, especially um, as queer people. Our lives are full of regrettable situations, and situations where family acting out of love resulted in very hurtful activities,
Yes.
right? And but in the end, it's about they meant well, and
Mhm.
um, have the maturity in the long term to see that differently. But also, it really helps to move out.
Yeah,
Then,
because you have to acknowledge as well, if even if it's coming from a place of love, it can be something that's already toxic. And in those cases, you will have to, take action.
Mhm.
So maybe they do come from a place of love. Maybe they just happen to be raised in this ultra religious mindset, and thus, no matter what you do, you are wrong
Mhm.
as far as their perspective is concerned. Maybe that can't be fixed with conversation. Then find your opportunity to safely get out of there and build your own life, because you do deserve that. But that's not to say that they're now forever cursed to be the bad guy in your story.
Yeah.
You have to realize, um, it's the dolphin analogy.
What is the dolphin analogy for everyone's benefit?
So, right now, for us, we are living in a world where it's unthinkable to imagine that your son or daughter might be dating a dolphin.
Go on.
But for all we know, years in the future, when we uncover or discover that dolphins are intelligent and have a language and can communicate with us, and we finally find technology that allows us to bridge the gap between dolphins and humans and machines and transhumanism and all that, then maybe there will come a point in time in the future when it is no longer as strange to find your grandson dating a dolphin, because the technology now allows them to live on land and machines allow them to communicate. It sounds funny,
Dolphin, dolphin, dolphin,
but
dolphin.
then that is how unthinkable or how strange or how impossible it is for some parents to think of gay relationships.
Mm-hmm.
As far as they're concerned, it's wrong, it's unthinkable, it doesn't make sense. But that's their world, that was their life, that was how they were raised by people who were raised at an even later time.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, a even late earlier time.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have the foresight as well of the people 4 or 5 generations from now who might, in their transhuman state, be so beyond the limitations of the human body. You know? That show years
Years
and
and
years
years.
nicely explored the idea of
Transhumanist
kids who
thinking.
are now doing alterations to their body. But even before that, we had games like Eclipse Phase, wherein humans have transcended to the point that they could have an octopus body,
Mm-hmm.
or they could like email themselves in order to visit their parents while they're still working. And these are all science fiction, these are all beyond thought. But again,
So are cell phones.
for all we know, in the future, you know, beyond human relationships can be the norm. And if that sounds impossible to accept, then you have to realize now that's a close enough glimpse to why, for grandparents, for some parents, it's also very hard for them to accept. It's not really their fault. It's the world they were raised in.
Ooh, Carlo has a nice little story over on the YouTube side about an argument with his eldest about biking and COVID, and then ultimately the resolution was talking and explaining,
Mm.
and I'm glad that that worked out. And again, it's like because um, and a lot of times kids to flip the script when you're no longer the kid and you're dealing with
Mm.
kids of your own, your children are learning to assert themselves and to get a better sense of their
Hi, Noel.
get a stronger sense of self and to a better sense of self and to better like assert themselves. And this will naturally come into conflict with you as a parent trying to do what's best for them, and where for most of their lives you have been able to just dictate what they should do. But now you have to discuss and get buy-in and explain. But yeah, I strongly believe in talking and explaining,
Mm.
that and helping them understand. It's difficult, it's definitely easy because they do not speak the same language as you, and again, very different perspective. But try to draw on your experiences of when you were a kid and what were your priorities
Mm-mm.
and how you understood these things, and maybe you can find ways to better explain things, and yes, eventually get buy-in from your kids.
And think of the dolphins.
Yes, Toby loves this dolphin analogy. This is, I think, the
It-
second Baduy Pride episode we
It
have brought up
helped
the dolphin
me. It
analogy.
admittedly helped me grasp things before, because for a period in time, I really felt resentful at the thought that it was so hard for other people to grasp
Mhm.
why it was okay. But then when I thought of that analogy, that's when I started to realize that there were those automatic, what? That's so wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized, so why is it wrong?
Yes.
And then, I'm seeing it as wrong because I'm using what I see as normal as my definitions and standards. But those change with time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which is a good point. And hey, Noel, hope you're feeling better though. Glad you could join the stream. Okay. You should answer that. So I guess we can shift now to talk about personal conflict with friends. How do we want to start talking about friends? I think in this digital age, we can probably touch briefly on social media conflict. Only because again, well, argue it can be arguable to some degree because some people will not consider social media contacts as full on friends.
Mhm.
Some do, and just that understanding may save you from a lot of online conflict with people you are connected to via social media
Mhm.
because you may interpret the level of your relationship very differently. Um, and it may not be intentional. Sometimes just following each other on Twitter is supposed to be a big thing, because it's a one directional platform. So following back is important. Or in other cases, accepting there is like some philosophy accepting a Facebook request is still of like a higher level of importance than a Twitter follow
Mhm.
because it's like my family has access to this and all these
Mhm.
things. So
Mhm.
so there are very different varied ways you look at social media contacts. And
Yes.
it is good to err on the side of caution if these are people you have not met in person yet. Definitely choose your words carefully and get your empathy muscles working overdrive
Mhm.
because there is a greater likelihood of misunderstanding because you don't really know each other as well as you could.
And social media has a innate psychological effect of making people want to stand on soapboxes
Mm.
and give their piece.
Yes.
So it doesn't
Your hot
encourage.
take.
Yeah, it doesn't encourage reading to learn, which is the listen to learn. It encourages, how will you answer?
Yes.
How will you
What's
respond?
on your mind, as
And-
Facebook asks
And
you?
in many cases, it, it it sounds like it started, not started, but it was one of those things that I noticed manifested the most when people would go, blah, 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 fight me.
Mm.
And I'm
Yes.
like, why? But, as fun as it might be as a meme to do, you realize that's what social media encourages. You want to throw your take, you want to throw your statement. You're not there to hear people out. And the funny thing is, I've even seen posts wherein, blah, 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 I want to learn and understand this. But then as people start offering, contradict, contradict, contradict. So I'm like,
Why are you attacking me?
why didn't you do
Ah.
yeah, so it's tricky. It's
Yeah.
always hard to rely on conversations in social media. I feel like social media interaction should always be seen the equivalent of doing or seeing people in a public venue, like let's say they're at the bar or what, but they're not necessarily themselves yet. They won't be themselves until you talk to them in a more intimate level, whether it's a private chat or whether it's a one-to-one conversation. Until then, know that everything is suspect. Everything is part of a social experience and not a personal experience.
Yeah. So I guess my approach to it, at least for like people that you may not know too well, but you're like been connected to on social for a long time, is that I guess one, weigh carefully, realistically, what is the level of your relationship with one another? Do you just like each other's posts? Do you occasionally exchange comments in public?
Does it go both ways?
Does it go both
Because
ways?
it's very possible you're liking, but
They never like yours.
Yes.
Yeah. And then or have you had private conversations yet?
Mhm.
Have you had video conversations yet? Have you met in person yet? So I mean, like there are all these
Mhm.
kind of different tiers to think about it. And I only bring that up because then think about the level of how much do you want to pursue this argument.
Mm.
So similar to work, and then like there's a on social media, more often than not, there's a lot of things, just drop it. It's like you don't really need to dignify it with a response. And if you really want to like pursue it further, what is your objective? Is your objective to change their mind because they're wrong? Or is it because you want to understand their side better? And think about where you're driving at. It's sort of like what we said at work. Like, what is the goal here?
Yes.
And then if you're really about because you want to maintain your friendship, but you also want to like maybe better understand or get a better chance of explaining why you're very concerned about their opinion, then this is definitely something I feel is always better at a private conversation. And don't continue to use the public arena. And public, I'm sorry, means commenting on their wall for other friends to see or replying on Twitter for other people to see. Yeah, but the public comment does not help anything. It just escalates. I think the only thing worse than the public comment is the either the screenshot reply where you take a screenshot of their horrible take and then you post it on your social media or you take it to another platform and talk about it, or the retweet, the quote tweet, sorry,
Some
where
tweets.
yeah, where you quote. Well, some are worse. Some tweets are probably worse because then you're not really directly anything.
Yes.
Or the other is that you don't talk to the person, but you retweet their tweet with your take in contradiction. I've seen people who have entire arguments where they never reply directly. They just keep quote tweeting, and it's like, oh my god. It's less about talking to the person, but more showing your own followers this is what you're saying, and all the passive aggressive nonsense.
But of course, your mileage may vary. Maybe we're just not used to that form of communication. Maybe it's not as stressful.
We
And,
don't understand you,
frustrating.
dolphin lovers.
but I will admit that I hope it brings you peace.
Yeah, I mean, like if you really, I mean, we have friends who like seem to spend a lot of time on social media fighting other people in public venues, and
Mm.
I'm sure there are important issues. I don't know if they're making lasting change, but if it helps you sleep better at night, then by all means go ahead.
Yeah, we won't yuck your yum. What?
You're really trying to make this statement roll.
I didn't create that.
Yuck your yum.
I didn't create that. That
Yuck
was
your
that,
yum.
that's a statement.
From where?
Yummy.
Yuck your yum. Okay, so that's the digital social media remote side. So let's talk about closer friends that you know.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
So the tricky part with close friends, and this already for me, this is close friends and relationships.
Mhm.
Because close friendships for me is not so different from relationships in the sense that it is a connection of deeper meaning
Yes.
that you both invest time and effort on.
And maybe you all
And-
sleep with each other. Yay.
And there's that understanding that you appreciate each other to be part of each other's lives.
Yes.
In a relationship, of course, that goes beyond just friendship, and there's romance and intimacy. When it comes to friends, your mileage may vary because we're celebrating the fact that friendships can be diverse.
Diversity.
So when it comes to that, I think the first thing I will bring up is stop thinking that relationship means you have telepathy.
Ooh.
There is this inherent, no, not inherent, but there is this common frustrating moment I see from friends or from people in relationships wherein one will go, but the other should know better, or the other should realize by now.
Yeah, they should
Or-
have noticed na nagdadabog ako.
And oh my gosh, the fact that you're complaining shows it doesn't work. So stop complaining and do something. It just if you're complaining that the other has not noticed anything, then you'll have to realize that from their perspective, they might be thinking you have not noticed something either.
That's also possible.
And you're both waiting for someone to do something. In many cases, that is the case.
Mhm.
Wherein you'd have nagtatampo, expecting this one to say sorry. But then this side, nagtatampo, and expecting this side to say sorry. And that's why things never get resolved. And worse, you start sniping at each other. You start throwing these small statements. Even worse,
Social media parinig. I hate social media
yeah,
parinig.
or
When you complain to social before you talk to your friend, significant other, whatever about the
or
issue.
or you have separate circles to complain to.
Oh yeah,
So,
yeah,
di ba? Party A would have group A friends and they're all, ay nako, si ganyan na naman, blah, 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 blah. And they're all blah, 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 blah.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then
yeah,
group B will have the same blah, 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 blah,
yeah,
blah, blah.
yeah, yeah.
And it's not healthy. It just doesn't work. It's not, maybe it works for some, but from at least my experience, and yes, my experiences are not universal, um, I have not seen relationships last when they are very um, expectant of telepathy to exist in the relationship.
Yeah. So if you have concerns, talk about them. And I think I mentioned this somewhere or I tweeted this. What is that? Okay, I tweeted it somewhere and like it's just Toby and I. It has taken many years of being together
Mhm.
to learn that we need to. There are always going to be difficult conversations that we need to
Mhm.
have. They are uncomfortable conversations, especially when we find there's something that we're not happy with, there's something we feel there is fault, whatever, and we just need to have these conversations. And but we, similar to what I said about work and family, we come from a position of trying to understand. We come from a position of trying um, to move forward and find a solution. So
Mhm.
it is not an attack. It is not an accusation in itself. It is, this is what's bothering me and this is how it makes me feel, and all these things. So like um like recently I had mixed feelings about my birthday, and then it was
Mhm.
like super dragging me down, and it's
Mhm.
not necessarily anyone's fault,
Mhm.
but it was super helpful to be able to talk to Toby about it, even though it's not even like, it's not, no one's at fault here.
Mhm.
But it was dragging me down
Mhm.
and it was affecting me, but rather than I just simmer and suffer in silence, um, we had to talk about it.
It was you were feeling crappy about it, and then me, I started to spiral as well because I felt helpless, I felt annoyed,
Mhm.
I felt inadequate. And at one point, when I realized we were both diving into this pit, I realized, okay, we have to stop. This is not getting anywhere. And I was like, okay, let's process. And then I don't know, I know I like I held you and it's like, okay, let's process. Let's talk about this. And it started uncomfortable,
Mm-mm.
but as we talked about it, we started to realize how certain things now sounded when you say it aloud,
Mm-mm.
and it also gave you certain perspectives of what would work to help us. And it's out there. You have to be willing to risk those uncomfortable moments to break through and make that connection again. It's not an instant connection. It's just because you've been together for so long doesn't mean everything now communicates well. you know Relationships are not a skill, and you don't suddenly become rote at something because you've been together for 10 years.
Yeah.
Maybe you might do some things rote, but the act of communicating and keeping that conversation going needs more than just rote activities.
Yeah, so like I mean, like Toby and I have been living together for over 12 years now, and but then despite our years and the different conversations we've had, it's still hard to start. It's still hard to like bring up the topic and like,
Hmm.
okay, let's talk about it. Like obviously you're unhappy, but then like, talking about why you're unhappy, because and like for me personally, especially in that situation, I know a lot of my reasoning was stupid. Or
Hmm.
like I hated the fact that I was feeling this way
Hmm.
because I did not logically understand it.
Hmm.
But sometimes just talking through it helped both of us, and then
Hmm.
we just kind of felt better about it. So Mitch had a story, and again, yeah. So like we all have like that dark side and something, and because sometimes when we're hurt, then we want to take revenge in a way,
Hmm.
eye for an eye, and all that. But it may not help in the
Yes.
long term.
And there is the act of sniping, or the act of throwing shade or making those statements. um, it comes from that need to feel you're again in control, to
Mm-hmm.
feel you're being able to take charge of the situation. So it's not necessarily always healthy. It's rarely helpful, but it's understandable why those happen.
Yeah.
But then if you rely only on that to find your resolution or your happiness in things, then that becomes a very slippery slope. And in many ways, that's what social media is all about. It's about those bursts of satisfaction because you feel like you did something, and look, the audience has reacted, and then it's gone again. So you need your next shot, and they reacted, and then your next shot. So it's scary if you rely on just that. You
Yeah.
have to learn, or you have to open yourself up to the more um, long term connections, which do mean having to embrace sometimes the harder or less comfortable risks of being vulnerable and open. And I think that's the next point. Relationships require vulnerability. It
Mm.
requires you
Yes.
to be open about what you don't like. It requires you to be open about whether something has, because it's one thing to feel, okay, you feel bad. Maybe you're watching a show and then pinalitin channel and you're like, but then maybe that wasn't really a factor and you can just let it slide. But then,
Maybe they ate your bread.
yeah, but then let's say they're doing it time after time after time again, and you're starting to realize you're not really happy with it. Then you have to bring it up. You have to talk about it. Because if you don't, will you allow it to grow into the seed of resentment? And then later on, you'll have a major argument. And then when you try to find the root cause because of that freaking channel, diba? And we've seen this happen
Mm-hmm.
in groups. We've seen it as a scene in movies because
Yes.
it really does happen. These micro frustrations can become those bottlenecks to your relationship if you don't pay attention to them.
And the behavior is like almost always the same. It is the
Mhm.
you want them to change. You're not gonna tell them that there's something you wanted to change. You expect it to change
Then
without
you get
doing
mad.
anything. And you get mad when it doesn't change.
Mhm.
And it's when you say it like that, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't sound
And here's the
logical.
second layer to that. So let's say you're the one doing that. Me naman, I start to notice you're always mad. I start to notice you're always frustrated. I don't know if I'm doing anything. So now I'm thinking you're just being difficult.
Yes.
So now I'm blaming you for something you're blaming me on that you haven't told me about.
It's all connected.
Yes.
And we're not innocent of these things. I'm
Hmm.
sure we've had our share. But
Hey, Jed.
but yeah, I mean, hopefully our experiences, while not universal, may help you and find the way forward. Uh, it's tricky at times, and then
Mhm.
it's funny because yeah, it happens not just with your significant other, but even with just close friends.
Yes.
And there are a lot of weird misunderstandings among friends that like boil down to weird activities like this
Mhm.
because there was you'll sooner or later you'll dig down to that there was a slight an offense, a
Mhm.
mistake that was done that only one side was aware of and the other side wasn't.
Mhm.
And so there was no opportunity for the offending party to
Mhm.
resolve, rectify, make amends. But you the person who was hurt will just always feel bad and then feel like they never got the apology they deserved, so they have no closure. So and that festers and all these things. Yeah. Okay.
So,
So
arguments. They're always tricky, but communication is the bottom line of each and every one. It's never, sorry, it's, it would be, it would be illogical to believe that all arguments can be resolved. There are times when certain arguments can't be, whether it's because, it's just grown.
irreconcilable differences.
Yeah, it's just really grown, or there really is no desire to reconcile things. There's no willing to give quarter. Basta, siya yung mali.
Your
And,
views are so opposing.
and we just have to accept that that's how it is sometimes. But for a majority of the arguments that do happen, I do sincerely believe that if you choose to take the chance to communicate, then that opens the possibilities of resolving it. But if you're the only one choosing to do it, it will not work.
And then I guess sort of my wrap up point in a way is that and I know the original request was like which is how to win an argument. And I think that's the thing, and like which is like become like the main message is that if you enter an argument hoping to win,
Mhm.
you may have already lost
Mhm.
because then you're not thinking about ever finding common ground, finding a solution that works for everyone, finding a way to move forward. You're coming in with the mindset that I'm right, the other person is wrong, and that's it. And it's not a mindset that will, you know, allow for good communication. It will not allow for a proper dialogue where you actually hear the other person and
Mhm.
understand and learn from them and find that step forward. So and it's I mean, like, sure, there are even factual things like you're going to argue about what's right and that what is literally right and wrong. But even then, you can get bogged down to: is this really an argument you want to have? Is this
Mhm.
really a point you need to prove? And just really think about this because
Mhm.
whether it is work, family, friends, or lovers or partners, um, try to think long term. Try to think what will this argument day what is our goal? What are we leading to? Is it
Yes.
just to be right? Because is it will you be right at the cost of your relationship with this person, whether
Mhm.
personal or professional? Is it at the cost of being marked as the difficult one at the office?
Mhm.
Is it you know there are consequences to these things sometimes. So think about the why
Mhm.
and don't just
The why
argue
and the how,
the why and the how.
because how you approach that issue um, is then something that goes beyond just you and the person you're having an argument with.
Mm-mm.
Maybe you feel like you won because the other one just shut up, but then everyone else can see that the person shut up because there was no talking to you,
Yeah.
and everyone can see now how you're still carrying things in that way while the other isn't. So, you know, um, arguments require a step back, and sometimes that step back is a step back with yourself. You have to see yourself like a third person view to see how, and to see how you're handling things.
Yeah, and Noel had a nice comment about like how friends and family can be brutally honest because ultimately trust, earning trust, building trust, deepening trust with someone is making yourself more vulnerable to those
Mhm.
people, and thus you by opening up to them more. Sadly, that also means they have a greater chance of hurting you, and
Mhm.
you just have to keep in perspective like it's a two-way street, and by trusting them, this can happen, but you also have to trust that the difficult, the harsh things they are sharing come from a position of love, what they think is to your benefit, for
Yes.
your best interests. You may disagree, um, but then don't just be defensive and don't just snap back, clap back, whatnot. So
Mhm.
too many relationships bog down when the very thing that deepens the relationship, the increasing vulnerability, is what brings it down. Also, because yeah, inevitably these people can hurt you a lot too. So yeah, so don't try to win arguments. Try to resolve them and find a path forward. Is like I think our general thrust for tonight, and we hope that you. I hope it's a good perspective to keep in mind.
Yes. All right. I think that's it. That's our Friday episode on resolving arguments. We had a lot of fun, and we hope you'll join us again next time.
For questions or suggestions for future episodes, you can fill up the Google form at bit.ly Baduy Pride Ideas. Thanks again to Mitch for suggesting this topic today. I
Mhm.
hope you appreciate the way we kind of spun it around to like expand the discussion. Because if not, it was going to be Rocky's Debate 101, where you need a thesis statement, 2 to 3 supporting arguments, and fit it in 7 minutes. Okay. You can follow us on Twitter, Altobino Shade, RG Sunico.
You can also check out our blog, badaypride.com, for all the previous episodes and stuff about us.
Feel free.
Mitch, yes, this is my topic.
Feel free to continue the conversation in the comments below and let us know that yes, this was Mitch's topic. And be sure to subscribe for notifications, whether on Facebook or YouTube, so you don't miss our next live stream. Once again, I'm Rocky,
And I'm Toby.
and this is Baduy Pride. Thank you so much for watching.